right, thanks for coming out today, everyone. I'm Farmer Dave. For those of you who don't know me, I've been working in the state's medical program for vireo green goods for over 3 years now as a cultivator. Part of the panel here today is coordinated by my nonprofit, Frontline Blood Foundation. We're all about helping vets in cannabis, specifically educating them to grow cannabis at home, and then preparing them for jobs in the industry, both through online training and then some hands-on component as well. So we have a really nice panel today with some unique perspectives. We have a chaplain, we have a family member of a veteran, and then we have someone who helps veterans in a health aid capacity. So I'll let Sarah take it over from here, but thanks for coming out tonight, guys.
Awesome, thank you so much, David, appreciate you. Welcome everybody, we have a treat of a panel for you tonight once again. So tonight's panel is about veterans and cannabis and alternative therapies. Like David said, just hearing a variety of voices of people who have experience with veterans and just their experiences with their veteran family member or themselves, or in the chaplain's case, many patients. And then after this, there's also Bloom Drop. The next issue of Bloom, North Bloom magazine is here, so please stick around for that big debut and a couple of other treats after the panel. So I'm going to start by introducing the panelists. First of all, there was a veteran, Jason Arcand. He wanted to be here today. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency and will not be making it, but he is a former team leader of the 75th Ranger Regiment, where he implemented training for combat skills. He's also on the board of David's nonprofit, Frontline Blood Foundation, so we would love to see him and hear from him in another time. So at the very end here, we have Ian Olson. He's a board-certified chaplain and Iraq combat veteran who is currently finishing his doctoral degree from Vanderbilt in integrative mental health and is on an advisory committee with Wounded Warrior Project in Standing Up a Spirituality program. So really interested to hear what he has to say. Next, we have Lynn Wachtler with a whole bunch of credentials behind her name that I don't know what they all mean. So I'm going to have her tell you more about herself in a minute. She's also founder of Ceres Medical, a clinician formulated cannabis brand. She's also founder of the North Bloom magazine. Lynn comes from a family of combat veterans with PTSD from every American war since World War I. Professionally, Lynn cared for veterans with PTSD for almost a decade, so she is a nurse with practical experience. Next here we have Jackie Vvintre, and she is a graduate of the University of New Orleans. She's a cancer survivor, a first-generation Salvadoran-American, and a former US Marine Corps NROTC program. Jackie is the founder and CEO of Vvintre Living Luxury Cleaning Services, a minority woman-owned business serving the Twin Cities Metro. And lucky for us, Jackie is the wife of Matthew Robidou, over here to the left, we all know and love. And he's a Marine Corps veteran, owner of the local edible brand Raiden Labs, and she is the voice of a loved one of a combat veteran from her perspective. I'm Sarah Schutte. I'm president of Minnesota Craft Cannabis Guild. We bring high-level educational resources and voices to the community, the craft cannabis community. I'm a certified professional soil scientist. I'm also the loved one of a war veteran and have some of that experience. It's not what I will be talking about today. I'm an agronomist and used to live in Humboldt County, California for many years and ran an agricultural testing lab supporting cannabis cultivators in Northern California. So, there's all the introductions. So today we want to have a thoughtful discussion exploring how cannabis supports our veterans' wellness, the science behind its therapeutic potential, and what the broader public can learn from the veterans' lived experience. I want to take a moment to recognize and honor our veterans. They are our neighbors, co-workers, friends, loved ones, carrying stories and scars that many of us will never see. Their service to our nation often comes with lasting impacts, and the fallout from war doesn't end when they return home. It's essential that we not only acknowledge their sacrifice, but also support them in their healing and listen to their truths and recognize their continued contributions to our communities. Their presence is a reminder of both the cost of war and the strength it takes to keep it going, or to keep going. And they deserve more than our thanks. They deserve our care, our respect, and our solidarity, which is why we're all here today. So, I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to start with Ian down here. He's a combat veteran as well as a VA chaplain, so he has two different perspectives that we've been talking about. And the question that I was going to start with Jason was, one of the goals in all of this is changing the stigma about veterans getting the help that they need and how the military shapes your identity as like a real man and a tough guy, and trying to, and as a person who sees these people come in as your patients that come in and speak to you, and possibly you yourself, just trying to come to terms within someone's self to say, I need help and I can go get it, because there's a, you kind of stuff it down, you put it away, go be a civilian, you pretend it didn't happen, and that is kind of the exact reason why we have all of this fallout and all of these negative impacts. Can you speak to how people can come to a space of being vulnerable and letting that go?
Easy softball question, right? So yeah, I was in Iraq 03-04. I was military police back then. I was a gunner doing road patrols and quick reaction force, QRF. And I went, diagnosed with PTSD, general anxiety disorder. Went through, it took a long time. I got back from Iraq in 2004, and it wasn't until just a handful of years ago that I realized, one, I can use the VA, and two, hey, I've got some stuff. So they, they did a full assessment and everything, and decided that I should do CPT, cognitive processing therapy, which is 8 to 12 sessions, and I kind of, it was tough. It was tough. It's kind of like prolonged exposure therapy and needing to kind of tell your story of the traumatic event that you went through. So very difficult, but absolutely worth it. And the VA likes to provide Medicaid. So along with therapy was prescribed gabapentin as well as Vvintre to help with anxiety. And I don't know, kind of worked. But talking about the stigma, yeah. So it's lessening in the military. Chaplains and good commanders will talk about their own experiences and recommend their service members to seek help. And we're seeing more and more service members getting the help they need. There's programs. One of my soldiers just went down to a 45-day program in San Antonio for military sexual trauma. So there's help out there, and I encourage, if you are a veteran and you are struggling, or you're a current service member and you're struggling, to reach out to your chaplain, to reach out to your behavioral health officer, and receive the help that you deserve and that can help you along the way.
Nice. And I kind of jumped right in. I forgot that I was going to actually go down and let everyone introduce themselves beyond my little bio. And so I'm going to roll into Ian has recently retired and for the first time got to consume cannabis. And I want to hear about that experience, and then also just kind of share your own personal introduction, and we'll come down the line and backtrack on that one. So congratulations on your retirement.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, retired June 1st from 25 years between the Army Reserve and the Army National Guard. And yeah, so my wife, my friends, my extended family all use cannabis or psilocybin or other things. So I was really excited to find something it doesn't take 4 to 6 weeks to build up in my system, and that could be like Wellbutrin and a lot of the different medications for mental health issues. This was actually up at Leech Lake, up by Walker, Minnesota, about 3.5 hours from roughly here, and did a couple squares of psilocybin, and it was literally eye-opening as nature just kind of emerged in this intimate, integrated connectedness with my surroundings. Because I mean, we are a part of nature. We're human beings. We like to pretend we know everything and rule everything, but we are part of this intimately and intricately connected place that we call Earth. So just expanded that set of my mind and my connection. And as I talked to someone earlier, it lasts for a couple weeks. It opens up new neural paths. So I will continue to go down that path. And but a little bit about myself too. Born and raised in Minnesota, just like a few blocks west of here by Logan Park. I remember riding my big wheel to the park there and going to McDonald's on University. And I joined the Army when I was 17, and I did it. A lot of people do it for money or to serve the country. I did it because I thought it would look good on my resume. So did that, and then I was actually Federal Air Marshal for about 7 years. Kind of bored me. Sounds like a sexy job. It's not. You're just sitting on an airplane twiddling your thumbs. And then I was called to chaplaincy because I love hearing people's stories, coming alongside them through their most difficult time, and hopefully bring some healing. Sometimes just by listening, and other times helping them find connection and community where they are. So absolutely happy to be here, and I'm excited to connect with you afterwards.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and everyone will be around after the panel and talking directly. And we're really excited that we get to have a chaplain's point of view. It's really rare, and he also is, open. I mean, chaplain. When I think of chaplains, I think of Christianity, and a little bit more like the morality police. But this guy's cool and open to a whole new way of doing it. And then we have Lynn here, and she's, we're going to talk a little bit more about like the different medications and the cocktail of things that the doctors give you when you get back, and some alternative treatments that she can support with. So you want to share your story with us, Lynn?
Hi everybody, I'm Lynn, and nurse practitioner for almost 30 years, nurse for 35 years or so, so long time healthcare worker. I am co-founder of Bloom Magazine, and like you said, I've got a cannabis brand and have been working in the space for about 6 years now. So I feel like it's been forever that we've all been just slogging it out. But I think we're finally getting to a place where we're making finally some progress, and I'm so excited to be here with you all and to just keep working, keep building. I keep meeting new people, and I'm so excited about that. My career, before I came to cannabis, my most recent job was working at the state VA. So we've got both the federal, sometimes people don't understand that we have the federal VA, but we also have the state VA system, and they're different. It's sort of like a Venn diagram where they overlap services. So when I was working for the state, I worked for about 10 years, just shy of 10 years. I learned a lot about what we call the combat cocktail, multiple medications. I know from my own family members, like Sarah said, going back to World War I, most of my family members have combat experience and have come home with some difficulties and challenges. And as a family member, at first we just didn't talk about it, and now we're becoming more open about it. We're working on destigmatizing just the language and how we navigate those challenges. And I can relate a little bit as a nurse, and having worked, I know some of you nurses as well who worked on the front lines. I understand it now from a first-hand perspective, and so I understand some of those challenges that come with PTSD, and have done, it's inspired me to take additional training classes, suicide awareness classes, an 8-week trauma course, how we can better help people with PTSD, some newer modalities, coming with particularly mindfulness, nature-based therapies, community, that kind of thing. And of course, cannabis helps. MDH has a big study that they put out showing the benefit of cannabis. And I learned firsthand from my veterans who basically told me, thanks for all those meds, but I'm going out to the back 40 and I'm gonna smoke, and I'll come back and let you know how I'm doing. And I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, so that is a lot of alcohol use at young ages. So for me, I was like, what is going on back there? But they would come back and they'd be doing much better. And it just sort of opened my eyes to how it can really help quiet the mind, just settle round, you know. And I'm sure part of it was the setting, right? We talk about set and setting. They were out in the woods, you know, just grounding themselves and shooting the breeze. And I thought to myself, why are we not letting them do this, you know? Alcohol seems to be acceptable, and through my work at Bloom, I definitely have been connecting with veterans, hearing their stories, and just how alcohol often is used as, you know, as a comfort modality. And what I have learned, and what we're seeing more of, is how damaging alcohol is to the body, right? And how cannabis doesn't have those same sort of negative, detrimental health effects. So I'm really interested in that. I learn more every day from the veterans around us in our community. They are my teachers. They're just incredible. I'm so honored to hear their stories, that they entrust me with their stories, that they're sharing their stories in a very public way in a magazine. That's so vulnerable, and it's so brave, you guys. I just can't thank them all enough for being part of the Bloom community and sharing themselves with us that way. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Well, I'm Jackie Vvintre. I'm Matt Robidou's wife, so I'm so lucky to have me.
We all are.
So, kind of, I guess, like a little bit of background about me, and I guess, like, with Matt, we met at a very young age. We were both in a Navy program together called Sea Cadets, and so I was probably like 11, 12-ish. He was like 12, 13, like around that age range. And we did a lot of work together, you know, throughout our time, you know, there. Matt kind of did the typical Marine thing. He went off, married his high school girlfriend, so he didn't have to live in the barracks. So we had, you know, very much different lives for a long time. And then when he came back stateside, after being deployed and then being in Hawaii and everything else, it was super fun to reconnect, where it's just like we kind of rekindled. We were like, hey, like, are you good? Like, I've noticed some changes, you know, how are you doing? Kind of going through that process together, and that's kind of how we, you know, kind of reunited, I would say, after probably like 6 or 7 years. And I guess with that, Matt's brought me into the cannabis space quite a bit, where it's like, at first I was very much like, in high school, my parents were like, don't touch it, don't look at it, don't do anything with it. And then in college, I never even, thought about it, to where it was like I was in an ROTC program, and they were like, if you're gonna use it, you're gonna get kicked out. We were getting, the urinalysis tested all the time. So when I got reintroduced to Matt, he just started, kind of trying it out and everything else, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, you're smoking weed? I was like, I don't know what to do with this, where it was like very awkward for me, because I was like not in that mind space of like, okay, this is like, like an acceptable type of thing around that time frame. And I feel like for me, the biggest thing is like my mindset shift has been huge, just in terms of like learning a lot about it, the differences between cannabis and alcohol, and just kind of hearing all the stories that, you have a lot of friends, that, pass away from alcohol poisoning, or from doing dumb things, or like, driving drunk and all this other stuff. You don't really hear a lot about that with the cannabis side of things. And it's been so interesting seeing all of the positive effects that cannabis can have in terms of like pain management, helping you sleep, kind of just relax. Some of this other stuff versus alcohol, where it's like a lot of people try to use it to just kind of like let loose and, kind of do their thing. But it's been very eye-opening to me just to be part of this community and getting, like reintroduced to it in a different light, I would say.
Awesome. So continuing with that, so knowing Matt before and after his deployment, you probably noticed some shifts. You talked a little bit about some shifts, and to the best of or as comfortable as you are to speak to this, and as someone who supports his healing from the outside, how have you guys approached decisions about medication and therapy and cannabis and alternative healing together, and what kind of changes have you seen in him over time?
So I would say some of the big things is, so when Matt, first got out of the Marine Corps, a huge thing was he was on Vvintre, which, was mentioned earlier, where it's kind of part of that thing. And I remember we were talking, and he would get like these brain zaps, and his dad was on it as well, where it's like that kind of helps with anxiety and stuff. But it was like there were these awful effects from it, where it's like you'd have trouble sleeping, you'd have the brain zaps, you'd have just a bunch of different things that come with it. And then he was also taking Adderall for like ADHD at a much higher dose, than he is now. And it's just like there's a lot of things that they are kind of pushing for you to take, where it's like, okay, you get all these different side effects. And I think it's been an interesting space to navigate, where it's like with the VA, kind of at first it was kind of very like a don't ask, don't tell about, cannabis type of thing. Where it's just like, there are situations where it's like they're gonna test you, where it's like, okay, if they test you and you test positive, you could get, X taken away from you. Like we were talking about with the different medications. But I think the other alternative things that we've kind of been introduced to is kind of like the grounding thing that you were talking about, where it's like we, personally, like we love going to Florida is kind of like our getaway place, and just kind of going there, going to the ocean, kind of just like reconnecting with nature, kind of, that was mentioned before. And then also just trying to do, either yoga things or like the sound bath, just like listening to different things, and trying to explore those different alternative, type of medicine or experiences if you've never tried it before. So I think that's been, major, just like opening your mind to, where it's like, you don't always picture like a Marine, going out to do yoga, like, type of thing, where it's like, it's a very, just like uncommon thing that you would think about. So I think that's, just like with navigating all that stuff, has been a lot of, testing the waters with different things, see what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and, just kind of like what it is.
And doing yoga does not make you any less of a man.
No.
Makes you more of a man, I think. Thank you for that. So yeah, continuing on with that, Lynn, we were talking a little bit about the combat cocktail, and there's this kind of a certain, like, if you have this symptom, you just kind of check, here's your cocktail. And then the intersection of that with alcoholism being rampant, and alcoholism as a coping mechanism. And a lot of these drugs have really negative interactions with alcohol, right? And there are some drug interactions with cannabis as well, but that's where nurse practitioners and medical community needs to understand. So can you talk a little bit more about that? And then I have a follow-up question. We were talking a little bit about the addiction concept, so I'm going to, after that, ask Ian about that combat cocktail and the addiction interaction. Start with you, Ian.
Thank you. So, as prescribers, we prescribe so many of those agents, the SSRIs, the benzos, you name it. Our veterans can be on anywhere from 2 to 30 different kind of medicines. So what I have been finding my own self and in my own discussions with veterans is there seems to be a lack of resources and knowledge in terms of how can we make the transition from polypharmacy, which is the combat cocktail, multiple medications. You could even translate that to elderly patients, polypharmacy. But we need clinicians who are cannabis informed, right? So as a clinician, I really have felt like it's the veterans kind of pushing the movement forward. You feel that wind in the sails of moving clinical practice forward in Minnesota. It's the community who is doing that. It's the community pushing the clinicians to learn more, to tap into that resource, the resources around them and the research that's available. And so it's really, really important. What I'd love to see, quite frankly, is cannabis started earlier as a first line agent, not as a 10th line agent. I really believe that if we start people, even when, most of us here are all cannabis informed, right? We know the power of CBD, a wonderful full spectrum CBD oil. Nurses on the front line were taking that, and I saw marked improvements in nurses' well-being and sleep, and same for veterans. So I think we're in that transition zone of where we're just starting to see it be okay for veterans to get medical cards and things like that. But we still really, really need clinician education. So that's one thing we can work toward as a group.
And if people can't get the right medication, then they're likely going to turn to the streets for other coping mechanisms. So I think it's really important for the medical community to be there, be present for what's really going on. So Ian, as a chaplain, you're kind of like a safe space for people to come to, right? Like you're not a cop, you're not a government official, you're not a mandated reporter, you're not a medical professional who needs to type all the notes into the system. And you said people will disclose things to you like heroin use or methamphetamines and like really intense stuff that they don't want to, and that's a big old secret, right? And so kind of how do people make their way to find you in the first place and then feel comfortable disclosing all of this intense stuff? And what do you see like with that addiction concept?
Yeah, so kind of give an overview of how veterans come to sit in front of me, or I sit in front of them. So usually it's, I work in the ED, emergency department, inpatient acute mental health, and then a medical step-down unit. So most veterans come via ambulance or a family member or concerned friend calls the crisis line and asks for a wellness check. Or sometimes, a lot of times veterans just self-refer, hey, I'm not feeling good, I'm feeling, I'm having these thoughts. So they come to the emergency department, they're triaged, and I like being in the emergency department because I can introduce myself, and then if they end up needing inpatient mental health, then when I go see them over there, they already have a familiar face. The biggest thing I see is substance use disorders, especially alcohol. That's the easiest thing to get. Veterans don't want to feel what they're feeling, so they numb, and they go too far, or it's a depressive depressive drug, alcohol. So they begin to catastrophize and spiral. And a lot of them they're just lonely. I think underneath everything is a sense of deep loneliness. So like I said before, during my introduction, it's getting them to kind of take the blinders off and see that there's so much support out there for them. So they go to the inpatient mental health unit and they have myself, they have recreational therapists, occupational therapists, nursing staff, psychologist, social worker. They've got music therapists. We have therapy dogs come in once a week, so vast resources. And then on the outside, there's wonderful programs, especially in Minnesota for veterans to connect. We have a peer support group run by a veteran that has struggled with either mental health issues or addiction issues. They're trained and certified. We have every third Saturday down by the Minneapolis VA, and they have a coffee shop, they've got a full gym, they have food and clothing and support groups, and it's just, it's an amazing, amazing family. And the VA isn't just, most hospitals, people go there to be seen by their primary care team. The VA, veterans go there just to hang out and talk with other veterans, which is amazing to see. Just opening up, being vulnerable, and talking about what they're going through.
Awesome, thank you. Earlier we were talking about that, like the biggest thing we see is loneliness, that loneliness factor. And another thing that came up was like purpose. When you're out in active duty, you have a purpose, you have camaraderie, you're all together, you're on a very intense mission with a very big goal. And you matter so much, everything matters so much. And then you get slingshotted back into civilian life, and there's this identity of like, what is my purpose? My purpose is like save the world, and now I just don't feel like I belong anywhere. I don't understand this world. It's very lonely, so I love that there's a resource people can come and just hang out with, like-minded people and have resources. So yeah, how do we, bring that, camaraderie and purpose back to civilian life with them?
So on the inpatient mental health unit, I do spirituality groups with our veterans, and one of them is meaning making. So how do we find meaning or make meaning after an adverse life event? And there's research papers on that, there's benefit finding, there's identity change, there's a change in values and worldview. So I use acceptance and commitment therapy, informed care at the VA. So one of the questions is, who or what is important to you? Who or what is important to you? It's so simple. And veterans will shout out, my dog, my spouse, being a kinder person. And then we go through this ACT matrix and kind of look at, what thoughts, emotions, feelings are preventing you from living out those values? What behaviors that other people can see? Is it alcohol? Is it, is it isolation? Is it whatever it is that's preventing you from living out your values? And what are you doing now that is aligned with those values? So yeah, meaning making, meaning is looking at the past and finding something of value from it and processing it. And purpose is future oriented. What can I do now to live, when I look back, a meaningful life? So getting in to think about these things, because I don't think we think about that very often. Am I living a meaningful life? And I think each moment has meaning potential if we bring that intentionality to it.
That's beautiful. You guys are making me cry up here. So yeah, getting into alternative healing modalities. So like we said, you come back from war, you get on the combat cocktail, you get ignored, and you're alone and don't have resources, but there are resources and alternative therapies. So Lynn, you have a company that helps onboard people, new consumers to cannabis. So Besides, so I want to speak to like how do people, new users, new veterans who are like, oh, I'm kind of curious, I can do this now, I would like to try it. How do they get onboarded? And then in addition to cannabis, what other therapies do you support with? Like you were talking about pet therapy and nature therapy and mindfulness and things like that. Can you talk a bit about that?
So I really think that those therapies that we're talking about, the integrative therapies, also really work on the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, right? So we know that the being in nature, like we talked about, the yoga, the pet therapy, acupuncture, massage, music therapy in particular. There's a lot of data coming out now on frequency healing, and so that's music, lights, sound. Those modalities really help change the brain waves, so you can help someone who's having a moment of anxiety just with music, for example, or trying a breathwork pattern, for example, is really a powerful modality, right? So it's kind of that combination approach. With my company, I don't necessarily do one-on-one clinical guidance. It's a very gray area right now. As nurses, we can offer education, we can offer guidance, but with my company, I'm not a cannabis clinician where I can, although I may know what I'd like to do in terms of tapering someone down, that's not what I'm able to do legally or have malpractice for. We have to think about sort of the medical legal aspects of that kind of advice. But the one important thing I would like people to remember is when folks are on the combat cocktail or some of these powerful medications, stopping them cold turkey, not a good idea. So they're medications you've been on a long time. These take time to taper off, right? And some of these medications have a particularly long half-life, so you need a long taper, and that really should be done with some intentionality and guidance if available. So.
Did you have something to add to that? Okay. I think another one for you, Lynn. We talked a little bit about, so there's skepticism about using cannabis kind of across the board, not just with veterans, because there's not enough research. We don't have enough research, right? It's always the go-to slough off the cannabis because not enough research. But there actually is research out there for PTSD and cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. So you want to talk a little bit about pushing up against that skepticism and what types of research is out there and what benefits cannabis has with the endocannabinoid system and emotional regulation and things like that.
So we're seeing a lot of data come out, particularly around anxiety, sleep, the PTSD that we mentioned. And one of the ways I keep on top of research, of course, is colleagues that are in this room, our nurse colleagues. LinkedIn is a good place if there are other nurses here to hop on LinkedIn. You can find cannabis-informed clinicians and pharmacists who are really putting studies up on their LinkedIn profile. There's lots of different groups you can join, and so if I'm looking at formulating, say, a new sleep product or something, I will just go on and start looking through studies, start looking at the quality of studies, the research, and then a lot of times I'll run things by a colleague, a cannabis-informed colleague, but there is a wide range of studies available. MDH is a good local resource too. They're studying different things as well. So yeah, there's a lot of studies out there.
The MDH, Minnesota Department of Health.
Yeah, Cannabis is a good one. Yeah, thanks, Molly. Cannabis.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's the other thing as well. We want to illuminate some resources, cannabis-friendly and alternative therapy friendly practitioners. I know, Ian, you said earlier that just being in the position that you're in, you run into a lot of clinicians who are actually pro-cannabis, and so the stigma, again, in the medical community is that doctors don't do this kind of stuff, and they actually do, and there are some, and Ian knows them personally. And then, just to smash a second question in there, you talked about the federal government is exploring other options like MDMA, ketamine, and other types of alternative therapies are actually being studied by the federal government. So onboarding clinicians who are friendly to not just cannabis, but all of the different therapies, and what are they talking about at the federal level?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the main ones, ketamine, MDMA. Within a therapeutic session can help a veteran access those difficult memories, but in a calm way where they're not overwhelmed, where they're not anxious and completely shut down. So there's been some great preventive control trials. A lot of them are on the West Coast at the VAs there, but we do have like ketamine and stuff at the Minneapolis VA. And just so if you are a veteran and you're worried about like disclosing use, like, well, I'll read from the website here. I got my phone out. Veteran participation in state marijuana programs does not affect eligibility for VA care and services. VA providers can and do discuss marijuana use for veterans as part of comprehensive care planning. So they just want to know so they can better serve you as a veteran. So if you're afraid of, I don't know if I can disclose this to my physician, it's okay. Like, we just want to help you. That's what we exist for. We wouldn't exist if we didn't have veterans coming through our doors. So if that's a hang up, you're all good. You're all good.
Yeah, so don't let that be a hang up, and that's also why I spoke to his unique position of, you can tell this guy anything and he'll get you in the right place, but also that, other medical professionals are into it as well. So, and then if you want to talk to him afterwards and get some specific connections, feel free, and or contact the Minnesota Craft Cannabis Guild. We'll get you in touch with anybody and everybody who sits on these panels. So, okay, Lynn, we're gonna go back to you. We talked about like seeing veterans on alcohol versus cannabis, like a side by side, and tell us a little bit more about your experience. Like, what do you see in a person who's using cannabis to cope versus alcohol as their medical coping mechanism?
So with alcohol, the effects we see from alcohol are on every body system in terms of brain, heart, and now new data coming out, cancer risk, really elevated cancer risk, not to mention liver, every body system. So I think for years we've been sort of fed, by lobbyists and advertisers, and that it's okay, and you see the beer ads, the people having fun, and then on the flip side, now we're seeing, like I mentioned, the detrimental health effects, the car accidents, the deaths. We lose over 100,000 people a year, to alcohol. It's serious. It's a public health risk for certain. And with cannabis, quite frankly, I could look at someone's blood pressure and know if they were using or not. I could look at their behaviors and know if they had smoked or not. In a good way. And when I think of cannabis, I don't think of just THC. I think of all of the cannabinoids, right? So CBG, I'm particularly interested in. CBG is my favorite cannabinoid. Just the mother cannabinoid. All the rest sort of come from that. But just the powerful effects on blood pressure, on cognitive function, on GI function. So I think people tend to get caught up in THC and start to become scared. I mean, my mother was so freaked out, but then, you know, she's the first one to use like a full spectrum balm because her arthritis is gone, you know, and so I'm really interested in some of the minor cannabinoids, CBN for sleep. So that is part of the education I like to do, is to help people understand that there's a wide variety of applications and so many things, so many things we can, symptoms we can address with cannabis, qualifying conditions on the medical side, I would say.
Yeah, and I would imagine that alcohol probably exacerbates some of the mental health issues that cause our veterans to go down not so pleasant paths. And I'm also assuming that cannabis would help do the opposite of that, in addition to the ketamine therapies and all these other treatments that are actually under medical guidance.
Yeah.
But alcohol, even in somebody who's not a war vet, doesn't have PTSD, that exacerbates mental health issues. So coming in a space where you already are in a mental health crisis, alcohol is the last medicine that you should be using. So.
The neurological benefits too, I've seen so much relief from, you don't really think about how, for example, restless legs, it really is so disruptive to people's lives and their sleep, but that tends to be one that I've seen so much benefit from a little bit of cannabis, and Parkinson's, some of those neurological conditions really tend to benefit from cannabis. And our veterans have high incidence of some of those disorders. And also when we think about the medications we use for mental health conditions, those neuroleptics, those powerful drugs, can cause some pretty serious side effects in terms of Parkinsonism, you know, giving someone, you know, Parkinson's disease really. So some of those drugs have those really serious side effects and then can lead to fall risk in our elderly, hip fractures and things like that. So when you think about a little bit of cannabis versus, you know, the Serapils and some of those big gun neuroleptics, I think safety profile long term is what I'm looking for.
Nice. All right, so Jackie, you know, a lot of emphasis is put on the veteran and the veteran's experience, and one of the reasons why we wanted you up here today is to get your experience as a loved one. And so as a loved one, how do you maintain yourself and your own well-being while also trying to support your partner and alongside somebody recovering from this trauma? And I don't know your background story, but we all have things that we're dealing with. So you're caring for yourself, you're caring for your family. What are some strategies that you use for the other folks out there who might be dealing with this?
I feel like you can go a lot of different ways for a lot of different couples, where it's like just being a spouse that really like listens. I feel like is a major thing where it's just like, you know, sometimes I'm like notorious for clamming up, and so I'm not always good, where Matt's more of a talker, where we kind of complement in that way, where it's like, if he's feeling frustrated or upset or something, like he can just kind of like let it all out, and then, you know, vice versa type of thing. I feel like with trying to stay grounded with each other, the most important thing is going to be communication, and that's always, but communication doesn't even have to be necessarily verbal. Like, it can be like, hey, how are you doing? And then just like, do you want to go for a walk? Or if you know that your partner enjoys doing something to feel grounded, I feel like letting them know what those things that you like doing, you know, kind of just like make you feel calm. So like for me, like I like listening to music. I always, you know, try to offer, you know, hey, should we go for a walk if we're feeling kind of tense, you know, from that night, just to kind of just break loose a little bit and put yourself out of the norm. I feel like it's honestly just like paying attention to those small little things, where it's like, how can I make him feel better? How can he make me feel better? Like an unwritten thing where it's like, I love coffee. So if Matt were to make me a coffee, or like, you know, just randomly grab me one, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like that would change my mood like entirely, where it's like, just kind of focusing on like their the 5 languages of love type of thing, and really trying to be open about that stuff and understanding. Connection isn't just verbal. It's physical. It's I like doing this with you so that I can help you relax. I want to watch a movie or I want to get a favorite snack type of thing. I feel like those are the major things for us. So our daughter is she's coming up on like 21 months right now, which is crazy. But it's like something recently that we like to do is like we'll just go to the park, and it's like just watching her and being like, oh my gosh, like that's our daughter, like. Cool, like you get to share that, like shared experience of like seeing just her be happy, and then you guys can kind of reflect on that. Where it's like, that's like I'm tearing up a little bit, but it's honestly like a lot about understanding each other's behaviors, triggers. If he's not having a good day, I can kind of tell. So it's like, all right, how do we stay away from things that are going to make him a little more agitated, or how can I, vice versa, where it's just like if I'm not in the best mood or if I'm feeling sad, how can he help me? So it's really about communication, figuring out your partner, and trying to explore other things that you guys like doing together, or like getting your favorite snack and watching some TV together.
Yes, it's the little things, just the little things that make you happy and brighten your day. So knowing about your partner and what their triggers are, where their happy place is, and try to bring them to their happy place. And just little things that you guys can both do that are positive together. Because I know sometimes couples can be like, let's go to the drink, let's hit the bar, And so like staying aware of that, and having a young child also probably helps keep you on that path as well. So that's good. And then what do you want other families and partners to understand about loving a veteran who's going through this situation, and how does cannabis, just getting back to the cannabis part, fit into your guys' journey?
I would say if in my case, where it's like I was very unfamiliar with cannabis at first, taking the time to actually learn about it is like massive, and just like educate yourself on the different cannabinoids, whereas like there's CBG, CBN, not just THC, and honestly just like kind of explore it with your partner, I would say, where it's like, I know for me, I'm like half a 1A type of person, and then I'm good, because so that I've kind of learned my limits, but it's like you can kind of enjoy that social aspect with your partner if it's something that you're comfortable with. But mostly just like educating yourself about the different products or the different things, and then really just asking them like, how can I support you with this? Where it's like cannabis itself is not physically addictive, but mentally you can become very addicted to it if you want to be in that state of mind all the time. And it's like, having those honest conversations of, hey, are you using too much? Like, do you need to use it at different times of the day? Like, how can we make this so that it's like you're keeping your productivity, where it's like maybe you just do it like, some people do like a glass of wine at the end of the night type of thing, where it's just like, okay, only, before bed or right before dinner type of thing. I'm not going to use it, 3 times a day, or cut back, and try to just figure out, just like manage each other and be like, how can this be beneficial for you without, you becoming another person? Where it's like, that can be with any type of medication, where it's like, you can tell when someone's on Adderall, where it's like they may feel like kind of distant, is kind of my experience with it, but it's like just seeing how it can, positively and negatively affect your partner, and just, keep note of it, and then also just share with them, hey, I noticed this day that maybe you smoke one more time than you would normally do, and then I noticed this change in you, and then just kind of talk about it.
So yeah, using your medicine as a medicine, not a coping mechanism. This goes for all medications and anything. We can all be addicted to anything, whether it's consumed in our body or consumed on our iPhones or whatever. And there's a slippery slope, so just having awareness of yourself, your body, your medication, saying, I am using this to medicate versus I'm using this to check out, which, we all want to check out sometimes, but we gotta be here now. So we're just about to the end of the panel. I just want to offer up space to any of you guys if there's anything we didn't cover that you really wanted to share about this topic, anything that came up. I'd like to give you space to do so now. Okay, that's
I'm a chaplain, so I have to talk about spirituality.
yeah.
One of my other groups is Spirituality 101, so what's the difference between spirituality and religion? And I'll just give you my working definition of spirituality. It's that which brings peace, purpose, and meaning in life in relationship to self, others, and the transcendent or divine, whatever you want to use. That which brings peace, purpose, and meaning in life in relationship to self, others, and the transcendent. And I encourage you, it's a journey. As Steven Tyler said, life's a journey, not a destination, right? Aerosmith. So you'll have ups and downs, but that's what life's about. The good, the bad, and just being present in the midst of that, and knowing yourself, being aware of being aware. So if you have spirituality questions, I would love to talk with you about that as well.
That is great. Well, I would love to thank our panelists for bringing their stories, and I also want to thank the Minnesota Craft Cannabis Guild and for bringing all of this to you. And I would really love it if you haven't already. Please go to our website or talk to Jesslyn or Jude or Bob. We'd love to add you to our mailing list, and we don't spam you with a bunch of stuff. It's all relevant information. When we're doing a next panel, we bring OCM representatives, we bring government officials, we help people with licensing. It's all free resources. Just sign up on our website, get on our list, and you will be in the know whenever we do awesome stuff like this. Thank you.